Hey there, guys. We are going to review some parts of the lesson plan that I think were maybe confusing or that weren't as strong as, or just maybe need a little bit more work on. And so this PowerPoint is that. It's reviewing the standards, reviewing the parts of a lesson plan. So, I want you to take a few minutes, and on the Edpuzzle, I want you to answer how many parts of lesson plan can you remember. Now on a notebook, you are going to create your own Kim chart. So we had these going at school. They're probably all still at school, so you probably don't have one at home. Just make it on a sheet of paper and take the notes that are here. So curriculum is the academic content and lessons to be taught in school, a specific course, or a program. So this is the actual what I decide as the teacher I'm going to teach, the actual lessons. Domains are a larger set of standards and grouping, and educational standards are a schematic that defines the learning goals or benchmarks for a specific educational program. So they're kind of like the overarching part, and then the curriculum is the nuts and bolts of how you're going to teach this. So this is kind of like, here's what you need to teach. The curriculum is how are you teaching it. So all states and schools will have challenging and clear standards of achievement and accountability for all children and effective strategies for reaching these standards. This is from the U.S. Department of Education. Take a minute in the Edpuzzle. What does this statement direct states and schools to do? So educational standards they describe what students are expected to know and do at a particular point in their education. They're also called instructional goals. There's usually a published document. There is a published document about what those standards are, and it kind of gives the teacher a way to have some accountability, or the school or the district or the state to have accountability of what is being taught in classes. So they're usually fairly broad statements, like you see here. Because again, remember that's kind of like the top part, the standards the top part, and then the actual curriculum and lesson is the nuts and bolts of it. That's the how are you going to do it. The parts of the standard are important. You can see that there's like, here, there is this more general, like here's the general, and then that general is divided into 3 parts. So here's what this looks like. No number names in the count sequence, and then that's a little bit more specific. What does that mean to know the number names and count sequences within a standard? And notice that they have the kindergarten count and cardinality, and then and then standard 1, 2, and 3. So they're divided up into different sections. So there are different variety of published standards. The first is the state standards. We've looked at that. Those are on the website. You're going to be looking at those some more. They are written for schools within the state, and they often adopt elements from the national standards. Then there are actual national standards that are program specific. And then there's also initiatives such as the Common Core standards or the STEAM initiatives that are national. So the biggest thing to remember is that the standards are not curriculum, okay? Standards are not specific directions on how a student will learn, and they are not instructions on how to prove attainment of each standard. That's where the teacher comes in. They decide how the student will learn and how to prove that they have met that standard. That's the curriculum. They're just kind of giving them an overview of what they should learn, okay? So curriculum includes specific learning standards in alignment with how the academic content is to be taught. So if you remember on our lesson plan, standards was the first thing. You have to find the standard that matches. You can't just teach a random lesson. It needs to connect to a standard because, again, there's that accountability piece in there. So they want you to make sure that you're teaching what you're supposed to be teaching to your students. So teachers take a lot of time looking at state standards and figuring out then how they're going to get the ideas within the state standard across by creating their curriculum. Okay? So the next part of a lesson plan is terminology. So these are terms that students will need when they are actually learning. So some terms I want you to add to your Kim sheet is active learning, Passive learning and terminology. So active learning is instructional methods that actively engage students in their learning. Passive learning is an instructional method that delivers information to students without feedback or engagement. Terminology refers to the content-specific vocabulary words in a lesson. You want your students to be as actively learning as possible. So the lecture is not always the most ideal way to give information to students, because a lot of times the students are just getting information, they're not doing anything with it, so they're just passively learning the information. So take a look at the scenario, and then answer in the ed puzzle, is this effective way to study vocab, why or why not, and are students active or being passive learners? Okay, students learn and remember new terminology best when they connect meanings with it they already know. This process occurs when they actively work with words in a variety of ways. So when you have your terminology is words that the students may need to know within a lesson, and you don't want to just give them a list of words and here, go, learn them. You need to give them ways to actively learn those words, and so you need to build those into your lessons. So a couple ways to actively learn words is have them work with their antonyms or synonyms, rewrite the definition in their own words, identify examples and non-examples, using the word in a sentence, creating a story that includes terminology, or drawing an image or a picture representing the term. That last one is what we do with the Kim chart, where I'm trying to get you to be actively working with the words that I give you, and by drawing an image that helps you be more active. So effective teachers do not limit vocabulary strategies to standalone list of words. Like I said, it includes active learning strategies, use strategies that offer multiple exposures to vocabulary, teach words in context, and draw connections beyond the lesson. So effective teachers also engage students in their own learning, pre-teach terminology before instruction for better comprehension throughout the lesson. So again, it's that you, especially with the vocab, the terminology you want them to learn within your lesson, you need to give them multiple exposures to the words. It's not just like here at the beginning of the week, here's a list of words and you're testing it on a Friday and you don't ever talk about them the rest of the week. You've got to give kids more opportunities to work with those words. And you want to, again, try to connect those to your lesson as much as possible, or your content as much as possible. Okay? And that often helps you to learn, for students to learn that terminology before you even begin learning. All right, I'm going to stop that here, and we're going to create another video here to talk about the last two parts of the review for the elements of the lesson plan.